With the help of Hashem, we are learning Megila Daf Lamed. We are actually up to Chavtes Amid Aleph, 6 lines before the bottom of the Amid, or 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid. But God willing, today we're really going to get ahead. We're going to have a little bit of a Kfitzas Haderech. First of all, we're going to conclude the sugya that's speaking about the kavod of Beis HaKnesses by also speaking a little bit about a similar type of kavod that has to be kept in what we call a Beis HaChaim, in a cemetery. And finally, we're going to start the Mishnah and towards the bottom of the Amid that is speaking about the sugya of the reading of the Arba Parshiyos. The Dalet Parshiyos are the portions that are read in conjunction with the month of Adar, and also getting us ready to enter the month of Nisan, Shkolim, Zachar, Para, and Chodesh. We're going to have a phenomenal Machloikas Amiroim. What is Parsha Shkolim? I mean, we know it's Parsha Kisisa, that's the way we do it, but as we will see, you have 2 opinions. There's going to actually be a discussion from where we're going to discover that there was a minig in Eretz Yisrael, that they would read the Torah weekly as we all do, but following a much different type of Seder. It would take them 3 years to read the entire Torah. And that's going to be connected to the topic of what Parsha is Parsha Shkolim, as we will see. The Rebbe, when he when he made the takon of learning daily Rambam, the reason why the Rebbe made the various tracks, aside of the concept that by the Rabbeim it was very important for the Lemudim that they initiated this Shavuot L'chol Nefesh, and not everyone is able to learn 3 prakim a day. We should all aspire to get there. But the reason why there is those who learn 3 chapters a day and 1 chapter a day is because when you learn 1 Perek Rambam a day, you finish the entire Rambam over 3 years, and that's going to be similar to that old minig that in Eretz Yisrael they would read weekly Torah portions around 1/3 of the size that we have them nowadays, only finishing it once in 3 years. We're going to be speaking about the 4 times or 4 potential times during the year that we take out 3 Sifrei Torah, what's going to happen if Parsha Shkolim, we know now, we paskin that we read Parshas Kisisa, falls adjacent to Ata Tetzava, or on the parsha in which we read Va'ata Tetzava. We'll see the challenges we have with that. By the way, nowadays, the way the calendar is fixed, that will never happen, but in the times of Chazal, it was a possibility. We're going to have various arguments between Rabbi Yitzchak, Nafche, and Abaya. We're going to have also a discussion regarding when to read Parshas Zachar, when to read Parshas Para, when to read Parshas HaChodesh, and we'll see it really will depend as to what days does Rosh Chodesh Adar fall, what days does Rosh Chodesh Nisan fall, what day does Purim fall, and there's going to be ultimately at the end of the sugya 4 different options. There are 4 different options of how these 4 parshas will play themselves out. And Chavre, without any further ado, so Nacham will up to Chavtes, Amid Aleph, 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid, quoting the Mishnah that we have concerning the kavi that we give to our Beis HaKnesses. That if a Beis HaKnesses is completely in a state of disuse, it's a churba, and all bayasavim, if grass is growing in there, so the Mishnah says, lo yitloish, don't even uproot it, bepnei agmas nefesh, because we dafka want to inspire grief. The Eibishter should see the lowly state of the Beis HaKnesses and have rachmanas, that the Jewish people should see the lowly state and do their part in upgrading it and refurbishing it and resettling it, etc. So the problem is, v'hatanya, we learned in a Braisa, eino toilish u'meichel. Yes, you may not uproot the grass to feed it to your animals, but you are allowed to uproot it just to leave it there. So which one is it? So here the Gemara clarifies, indeed, as it is normally the case, the Braisa is more elaborate. It's not contradicting, it's just limiting or qualifying the laws in the Mishnah. Ki tanan nami mas nisan, toilish umachol tanan. What may not be done? You may not rip out the grass to feed it to your animals, which then the grass will disappear. But if you're going to uproot the grass and leave the grass over there, it's still going to inspire grief. You get the best of both worlds. And the epis hakibud you're giving, it shouldn't be completely overrun with grass. Now we're going to make a certain correlation going le'ingen to a base hakvaris. And it's interesting as we are learning continuously that a person is like a Sefer Torah, a Yid is like a Sefer Torah, as we pointed out. So therefore there's a certain correlation. The ultimate Kedusha of the Beis HaKnesses comes because it houses Sifrei Torah, and Yidden. And when a Yid is buried, there's also a certain amount of Kedusha, thus also expressing itself with a demand on our part to afford that area with a level of kavod, of respect. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shar kol dvarim. Tanu Rabbanan. If you learn, you'll become a Rabbanan. Belaktin bohem asavim. Beis hakvadas. Eino hagamem kalos roish. Don't behave with frivolity. Where's Danny Fishman? Where's the Gabbai? And you may not graze animals in there. You may not create a canal of water, a system where waters go through the base, here called Beis HaKvares. Here also you may not gather grass, but if you gathered grass, then, in other words, don't make use of that which grows there. And if you gather the grass, then you burn it there because of the kavod mason, because of the honor that you are given to those who passed on. Now, this final statement, if it goes ahaya, if it's going on the statement prior to it, which burn it there, burning grass in a Beis HaChaim doesn't add to kavod. Ilema haseifa, what kivin shesarfim b'mekayim my kavod mason ikka. Ella, the kavod mason goes to everything else that's written prior to it. Why don't you gather grass? Because, you leave the place the way it is. Leaving the place the way it is actually in a Beis HaKvares adding cover to it, especially as we just explained that you're taking the grass to give it to your animals. In other words, you're making use of that which grows there for your own personal, for your animals. That's something that may not be done. Okay, now here we start, right, the sugya of the Arba Parshiyos. Says the Mishnah, Rosh Chodesh Adar, if Rosh Chodesh itself falls out on Shabbos, then when do we read the first of the 4 portions, which is called the portion of Shkolim? Koyrin beParsha Shkolim. We will read that Shabbos, the portion of Shkolim. No, Shkolim won't be read. What we call on Shabbos Mevarchim Adar, the month of Shvat. If it's Rosh Chodesh, you can afford to read Shkolim already on Adar, which is ideal. Now, why Bechlal are we reading Shkolim connected to the month of Adar? So Rashi tells us that being that in the month of Adar, as we learned so much together, in the month of Nisan, as we learned together Masechta Shkolim, that we gave a half a shekel, and that was used for all the Karbanos Tzibur, but every year had its own new separation, and we began using the new Truma, the new Shkolim on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and people have to get ready to make that donation, and even after the donation is made, you need time for that money to make its way into the chamber in the temple. So therefore, the ideal time is in the month of Adar, as we'll learn certain details soon, quoting another Mishnah in Shkolim. Now, when we say that we read Parsha Shkolim, let me give you a heads up. We know nowadays that we don't stop reading the normal portion of the week. We add, Maftir is going to be, instead of repeating the last 2 psukim, as we learned in Daf Chav Gimel, that from after we call an 8th person. That's when we read the Shkolim, and we change the normal Haftarah into a Haftarah that's connected to the Maftir. But we'll see there's a Machlokes Amoraim. We'll see in the Gemara later. There are some people who actually held that you substitute, that you don't read the regular reading, you replace it with the Parsha of Shkolim. So just to know, throughout the Mishnah, there's 2 ways of learning the Mishnah. Now, that is only if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos. If Chali is B'toich Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh Adar is during the week, again, in the Gemara we're going to have, is it during the week always, or maybe Friday will be an exception? Machlokes Amoraim. But if it's going to be during the week, then Magdimen L'Sha'avar, then you reach Shkolim, not in the month of Adar, but Shabbos prior to Adar. Now, when you're going to put, we're going to, if we'll have time, it's very simple. If you can have a calendar and put this on the calendar to see the 4 or 5 weeks that we're talking about, if you're going to read Shkolim, Shabbos, Mevarchim Adar, and as we'll see, the next Parsha, Zachor, is read Shabbos before Purim, then there's going to be a week in which there's nothing special added. And that's what the Mishnah says. Umafsikin l'Shabbos acheres. However, if there is a scenario of it that if Shkolim is read on Rosh Chodesh Adar Shabbos, then Zachar will be next week. You won't jump over a week, and that's going to be just part of the different scenarios, different kviyusin. If there is a hefsek, actually, just give a heads up, the end of the sugya will be that there's one type of kviyus of which day of the month falls on what day of the week, that not only are we going to have one hefsek, but a shayach that by the 4 portions is going to be twice a hefsek. It's just a technical thing that we'll put all together. Now, Bashniya means the second of the 4 portions. We read Parsha Zachar, and that we're not going to have to read Rashi over here. It's self-understood, right? That we are being masmech the miracle of Purim to the mitzvah of Mechias Amalek, because that's exactly who Haman came from. Bashlish is the third of the 4 parshas. Whether there's going to be a break or not, and we're going to have to work that out. We read what we call parshas, not parshas, Para Aduma, we call parshas Para. And Baravias, and the 4th is HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem. And why? So Rashi says, because in Parshas HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem, right, which is the first mitzvah that God gave to the collective Jewish people, there we have the parsha of Pesach, and therefore we're getting ready for the month. We're getting ready for the holiday of Pesach. B'chamishis, on the 5th week, and again, it doesn't mean on the 5th week, because normally the 4 portions are read over 5 weeks, because there's at least 1 week that you skip, and there's a kviyus again in which it's read over 6 weeks. B'chamishis means that the week after you read Parshas HaChodesh, Choizrin L'Chesidron, you go back, you resume the normal order. Again, either that meant because you mamish did not read the normal parsha of the week, or it meant that the Seder was Haftoides. The Haftoida, the content of the Haftoida is normally connected to the content of the parsha. We who follow the opinion that says, no, the 4 parshas we're not replacing the weekly portion. We're adding for the mafter. But the Haftoida, the content will be connected to the mafter and not to the parsha. On the 5th week, the content goes back to the Seder of the Parsha. Parshteist. And Lakoil Mafsikin, right? For all, meaning even on Yom Tov, we don't read the regular portion of the week. As we know, on Yom Tov we read that which is a part of the Torah that's connected to Yom Tov. And that's also true on Rosh Chodesh. That's also true on Chanukah. In other words, the Torah that's read is connected to that Yom Tov. Same thing is on Purim. Same thing is on fast days. We're going to see again an interesting machlokes amoraim what we read on fast days. Now we know we read Vayechal Moshe. We'll see. There were other opinions that held that they read the part of the Teichach from Bechol Koisai. Ubema'amadois, as we learned in Tainus, and on Yom Kippur. Now, by the way, when it comes to Yom Kippur, just to make for the sake of clarity, Yom Kippur is a Yom Tiv. When it says Lakoil Mafsikin, it means Yom Tiv. It means we interrupt the normal Seder and we read something connected to the Yom Tiv. So why would the Mishnah have to write something unique about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is Yom Tiv, and the answer is because Yom Tiv's reading is only in the morning. Yom Tiv you don't read in the afternoon. Yom Kippur means even in the afternoon of Yom Kippur, again, the reading that we do, Taka, which we do, is not the parsha of the week. Like Rosh Hashanah that falls on Shabbos, just for example, so during the day we read connected to Rosh Hashanah, and we're going to have a lot. What do you read? Different opinions in the Gemara. It's amazing how it evolved. But if Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, what do you read Mincha? The normal parsha. What we read every Shabbos Mincha, the Seder of the parsha is, not a Yom Kippur. That's the reading of Yom Kippur, that even afternoon, you don't read the normal Seder, and even if it's on Shabbos, on Yom Kippur afternoon, as we know, we read the Aroyas, right? Good. Now, Tanan Has.
Right, we do all these except for
Correct, Rab David, we do all of this except of Mamadis. That's correct. Mamadis we don't do because, like we learned in Tainis, when the temple is going to be rebuilt today, Amen, then there's going to be Yisrael b'Mamadin. What's the Mamadis service is connected with the fact that they have from their group standing and observing.
Nothing corresponding to it now.
Nothing yet corresponding to it. Okay. 1 second, I take that back. Learning the sugyas now in Torah Shabbat Peh, that's mamash in the place of the mamadis. Okay, Tanan Hasan. So now we're going to the first din, the first of the 4 portions. This is a beautiful, relevant sugya shkalim. What's the connection? We learned this in shkalim. Tanan Hasan. Be'echad ba'adar. This is a side of the reading in the shul, whether it is on Shabbos or Shabbos Mevarchim. A side of that Beis Din would make an announcement. That's the mashmin al shkalim. They would announce, Chavre, remember. Start getting ready to give the half a shekel. Daf Chav Tesam and Beis En al Hakilayim. If you remember, that this is the time Rashi tells us that the produce begins to sprout, and if you notice that in your grain there are other seeds that are growing with it, not because you planted it there, but that's the way the world works, because the bee brought it there, or how the wind blew it there, then you are obligated to uproot it. Prior to the Chodesh Adar, you would not notice it. So they would make that announcement. And now again the Gemara says, Bishloima ala klayim. Why is it on Rosh Chodesh Adar? Because that's Zman Zriya. Zman Zriya doesn't mean it's the time of planting. It means it's the time where the season of planting is concluding. It's concluding because now it's already the time for the growing. El ala shkolim minalan. Why are we connected to the month of Adar? Guys, we are reviewing the sugi we learned in Shkolim. So Amar Rav Tavi, he'll be quoted a few times soon. Amar Rabbi Yoshia, since it says in Parshas Pinchas, Zois oilas chodesh b'chadshei, and the Chazal say Amra Torah, Chadesh v'havei karban mitruva chadasha, that we should renew a specific month, and from that month on, for the rest of the year, we're going to bring the communal karbanos chavra from a new separation. And if you remember, we learned in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, Daf Zayin, we have a Gzeira Shava from where we learned what is the month from where you begin bringing the Nushkalim, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's a fact. So therefore, the Kiven, the Ben Nisan, Boya, Akruva, Mitruma Chadasha. So yeah, but Truma, we want for the new half of shekels to already be in the Beis HaMikdash, right, in the chamber, for them to begin using from that money. So Kadminan, V'Kaninan, Be'echad Ba'adar. So we read, now guys, this goes both to the reading of Parshas Shkolim. It also goes to the Mishnah that Beis Din makes these announcements. They work together. They're two different dinim, but they share the same content. For people to already have the heads up. And how much heads up do you need? A month. Now guys, that's a problem. Not a problem. L'chayra, this should only follow one opinion. We had this already a few times together. We had some psachim, right? How many weeks prior to Yom Tov is there an obligation to learn, to darshan the halachas of the Yom Tov? Machlekes a month or 2 weeks. So the Gemara says perhaps, if all of that is correct, which it is, both explaining again the portion of Shkolim and explaining the obligation on Beis Din, as we have in Masechta Shkolim, to announce. So come on, l'chayda, that should not follow Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, because the Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he holds that all you need is 2 weeks. Shtei Shabbosos, the Tanya. Shoyalim behilchas Pesach koydem lePesach. The Chachamim hold 30 days. However, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer 2 Shabbos, and the Gemara in Pesachim gives the reasons behind each Tana. So the Gemara says, no, our Mishnah goes even according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Why? Because Kivan the Amar Amar, if you remember details about how the money were collected, B'chamisha Asar Boy, that on the 15th day of Adar, Shulchanois, money changers, Yoishvin, B'Medina, they would sit throughout the country. People would have money. They would have dollar bills. They wouldn't have 50 cents. They wouldn't have a half a dollar. So you want to have available bankers all over the place for the people to be able to exchange and get that amount that they need. Now they only began to sit on the 15th. Now you get it. In other words, I didn't go to the Beis HaMikdash. And then there were other details. Already from the 25th, you would have a whole setup of the shulchanos b'mikdash. If you remember in Shkolim, we said b'mikdash doesn't mean in the temple proper. It means in harabayis, whatever the b'mikdash means. So therefore, since there was a certain step of the collection that began on the 15th, again, you need 2 weeks. Even according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, 2 weeks prior to the 15th, Hastavai to Rosh Chodesh. So shulchanos, mishum shulchanos kadminan v'kaninan nekuda. More details about this in a moment. And now the question is, my Parshas Shkolim, what exactly do we read? Here again, the Pnei Yeshua and others, this is the big question that, anything that is done continuously, how was there ever a machlokes? Similar to Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam's Tefillin, and many opine that yesh v'yesh, that from the beginning you had different types of tefillin. Could be that from the beginning there were different communities that read different things. Say that. So Rav Amar, guys, halt up. Rav says, you read, believe it or not, what we read on Rosh Chodesh. Tzavos b'nei Yisrael amart lehem eskavan lachmi. Parshas Pinchas. Wow. Shmuel says what we are familiar with. Kisisa. Right? The first psukim of Parshas Kisisa until Vosisa Kiyar Nachoshes. Now, Bishloim the Gemara says, Leman the Amar Kisisa, according to Shmuel, Hainu the Kadala Parsha Shkolim. We know why we read that, because there is where we speak about the Shkolim. But according to Rav, that says you read Karbani Lachmi, the Bach takes out the word Hachem. Why? Why that, right? Mida shkolim ksiva hasam. So then stay dorten wegen shkolim. So the Gemara says, yes, it does. As we just quoted Rav Mari, we'll keep on quoting him. Rav Tavi. What did Rav Tavi tell us? Rav Tavi told us that this is the source from where we learn that the shkolims, the new shkolims have to be reintroduced Rosh Chodesh Nisan. We learn it from the pasuk Zois Oilas Chodesh B'Chodshei. Where do we read that pasuk? In what we read on Rosh Chodesh. Very good. In other words, do we read the source of, or do we read the money of? Okay. Bishlam, now let's go back. Bishlam and Matzav Bnei Yisrael. Fakert, let's go. We're going in the opposite. According to Rav, Mishum deksiv karbanos hasam kiderav tavi, and the reason why we're reading shkolim, the reason why we are giving the chatzi shekel is for the karbanos. So that's the purpose. So that's why you read it. But according to Shmuel, according to the Alman Omer, kisisa karbanos miksiv, right? The purpose is not written there. Actually, you know what's mentioned in the beginning of kisisa? Yeah, I know the Torah speaks about shkolim, but the shkolim there are not about communal karbanis. The shkolim that were raised in Parshas Kisisa was to make the adonim, the silver bases, which was a one-time collection. So answers the Gemara, Kidatani Rabbi Yosef, that shalosh truma is saying, and this really goes to the word truma that appears 3 times, right? And there are merames to actually 3 different types of trumais. One was shal mizbeach la mizbeach. That's what we're talking about, that everyone gave. That was a yearly half a shekel for the karbanos, for the mizbech, the communal karbanos. There was a one-time donation of adonim, right, of shkolim for adonim. First 2 was dafka, a half a shekel from each one. There was the 3rd donation, shal bedek habayis, and there everyone gave, when they built a mishkan, everyone gave any amount that they wanted, and that went to the bedek habayis. So therefore, yes, we have merumas, the concept of also giving the half a shekel for the mizbeach. And by the way, being that the Torah mentions the word truma 3 times, that's the reason why it's our minig. We do it on Tainus Esther. That when we lezecher, when we give the half a shekel, and it doesn't have to be a shekel, it's half of your current nomination. So in America, it's a half a dollar. We give Taka 3 half a dollars because of this Kedatani Rabbi Yosef. Now, Bishlam Elamando Omar, Kisisam. Now we're going to go into a technical question. The Mishnah spoke about, the first case in the Mishnah is when Parsha Shkolim falls out on Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, right, Adar, we reach Shkolim. Now the question is, according to Rav, Shkolim is the reading of Rosh Chodesh. So according to Shmuel, it's a different reading. Rosh Chodesh is Pinchas, and Shkolim is Kisisa. Hainu the Shonei, not 2, it's different, it differentiates. Hai Rosh Chodesh, Mishar Rosh Chadashim. It's every Rosh Chodesh, you read the Tzavas Bnei Yisrael, right, that's Korbani Lachmi, and now you're reading Shkolim. But according to the Mando Amr, which is Rav, that you read Sav, right, as Korbani Lachmi, Leishai, etc. So my Shonei. In other words, and by the way, I just want to add something. The Rishonim point out that according to our minig, this would not be a question. We're going to see throughout the sugya today, and God willing, as we go into the siyum, that the readings were not azoi always fixed. There were different minhagim, and it changed. Our minig today might, just for the record, that on Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Stam, you read the portion of the week, and from after, you don't begin Tzavos B'nei Yisrael v'Marta Aleim. You read from after Rosh Chodesh, but you begin Ubayom HaShabbos, Ubarosh Chodshechem. Here, so that wouldn't be according. Now Rav is saying that on Shkolim you read from the beginning. According to our minig, this would not even be a question. Is a raya that in the times of Rav on Rosh Chodesh Shabbos, they would also begin from the beginning. So now the problem is, so then Shkoyach Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Adar, Shkolim. What are you doing? Like, you're going to read it twice? Like, what do you do? How do you do it in a way where you can say, aha, it's not only Rosh Chodesh, it's Shkolim? Answers the Gemara that what Shana, no, there is a difference. Why? And again, they would always read the whole parsha. We're not changing that. Today we read B'Yom Shabbos. They would read every Rosh Chodesh from the beginning. But how would they do it? So Rav explains the ilu on Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh means Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. So karu shita be'inyana diyayma lakula alma. They did not skip the normal reading. They would read the portion of the week. How many people would they call up? They would call up 6 people. I want to add another detail, and going back to Shuki, Danny gave you the right answer. That when we learned to Sugya and Daf Chav Gimel about do you repeat maftar or not, that was the boya. And even though we paskin that from after we repeat, we call the eighth person, our sugya today, and let's see how far we get, is based on the shita that holds that maftir was, the haftorah was read by the person who got shavi'i. Okay, just to know, that's our sugya's opinion.
That was the Tzvika's question.
Or whoever the question was, and that's what we do. You wanted to know why, but that was the aboya. No, Danny was answering. That is that was the question. That was the question with Valentine. Okay. Anyways, over here. So on a normal Shabbos, you would read 6. That means Shishi would go until the end. We have this now. Shishi would go. Yeah, we'll go until the end. In other words, Shishi would be Shishi and Shvi. Right. And again, this is based on the minig that the 7th person didn't have to read again. He got Shvi, and then he read the Haftorah. And V'chad read B'der Rosh Chodesh. And according to Rav, on every Shabbos Rosh Chodesh means you would not begin b'Yom HaShabbos. I get it. You would begin from the beginning. Shabbos B'nai Yisrael Amar Talem. But ve'ilu ha'idna, if it's Shkolim Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, Kulu B'der Rosh Chodesh. Now, Kulu B'der Rosh Chodesh, we spoke it out in the Mishnah. There is a machlokes Amoraim regarding the 4 parshias. One Amoira holds, not the way we do it, that during these 4 weeks, you b'chlal don't read the parsha of the week. It's taken out. So here it's different. The only reading is Rosh Chodesh. There's a challenge I don't want to get into right now, but we made those cheshbonos that we have to call up 7 people. For 7 people, you have to have a minimum amount of psukim. The Gemara was speaking about how do you even squeeze 4 people in. Let's leave that apart. Now, the Gemara says, well, that's only good. That answers Rav, Lemanda Amar L'Seder Parshiyas Uchayzer, like we just said. That the meaning of the Mishnah that you resume is because you completely interrupted the Parshas. Ela Lemanda Amar L'Seder Haftorah Uchayzer, that you don't stop reading the Parsha of the week. You read, even during the 4 weeks, you read the Parsha of the week, but you only supplement, you exchange the maftir for these portions. And the Haftorah is connected to the content of the maftir, which then, according to our Gemara, is Shavi'i. So we're back to the problem. Verstehst? So Parsha, so what did you do? So Gemara explains. So Parsha the Yemakonina, and if you're anyways reading the Parsha of the week, so again, my Shani, according to Rav, that Shkolim is just like Rosh Chodesh. How is it different? Answers the Gemara, it's still different. Shani, the Ilu by Rosh Chodesh, Karu Shita Binyana de Yoma, like we just mentioned, 6 people were given the Parsha. The portion of the week was divided by 6, which means the Shishi also got Shvi'i, one long Aliyah. The final one, the 7th, which was the one that already got that aliyah and then went into the Haftorah, he got B'der Rosh Chodesh from the beginning. But now, meaning if Shabbos Shkolim is on Rosh Chodesh Adar, Karu Tlasa B'nyana D'Yayma. You take the whole portion and you only give it to 3 people. And then Rosh Chodesh you give to the next 4 people, and here it works because Rosh Chodesh can be divided by 4 people. Not when you begin Ubayom HaShabbos, when you begin from the beginning. Guys, just to again be aware that we're going to learn, there are many things, there are nuances of what we read and how we read that will not always fit. You can already, we're going to see, again we'll see how far we get, that in the times of the Gemara, they sometimes differed from what they read from the times of the Mishnah. So there is a evolution, a kosher evolution of what is read, how it's read, v'chuli. Okay, Meisvei, Akasha, and Rav says in a Braisa. What will be beautiful is the Gemara throughout, bringing up different topics, will be quoting from the same Braisa, challenging one side or the other. And this Gemara goes until the end of Lamed, Amid Aleph, towards the bottom of the Amid. And by then, when we have to get there, we would have quoted every part of this Braisa, challenging this one, and then the Gemara just reads off the Braisa. Okay, so here's a shtickle. It says Rosh Chodesh Adar Shchalias B'Shabbos, which is the first case of our Mishnah, Koiden Parsha Shkolim, and the Maftir is B'Yehoyada HaKoyen, which just for the record is speaking about how the king Yehoyash refurbished the Beis HaMikdash. So now, according to the Manda Amar Kisisa, the donation of the Shkolim, Taka used for the building of the Mishkan, Taka used there in Shkolim, Parshas Kisisa was the Adonim. So Hainu the Maftirin B'Hayada HaKoyin, the Haftorah will have the content of this additional portion because the Damila, because in that Haftorah we're reading about Keses, Nefashos, Erkoi, with all of the details that are not Negeya, how people donated money for the king Yahoy Osh's refurbishment. Elalamando Amar Eskarbani Lachmi. Eskarbani Lachmi is not about refurbishing a temple. Eskarbani Lachmi is about giving maximum money for the communal karbanis, for the maintenance. Midami. So the Gemara says, yeah, Karbani Lachmi, like Rav Tavi taught, doesn't make a difference. The karbanis of the community needed to be renewed. You need to bring it from the renewed donation, and we're going to put all together in the same pot. Donating money for the building, donating money for the communal karbanis. It's the same theme. We are donating money for the communal needs, specifically for the Beis HaMikdash, building and karbanis. Next, Meisvei, it says in a Braisa, Cholias b'Parshas Smuchala. Here we go. If Shkalim falls out on the ordinary parsha of the week that is adjacent to Shkalim. Now let me say the following. Right now, the way the calendar is affixed by Hillel the Minor, the parsha Shkalim will never fall on Va'ata Tetzava. But in the times of the earlier era in the Amoraim, it could have fallen out that way. Now here again, the challenge will be that Va'ata Tetzava ends by Kisisa. So we're going to see about, so what? We'll see about the challenge. So if Kisisa falls on a week that the regular reading is adjacent to it, there's two ways. Bei Milafonel. What happens if Shkalim falls out on the portion of Va'ata Tetzava? Or Mila Achareo means if Shkalim falls out on Parshas Vayakel. So you're going to read Vayakel, then you're going to go back. We're going to see, so says the Braisa, Koyd and Oisa, no problem. Read it, meaning read the portion, and and read it again. Read it twice. Now, we're going to learn details about what does it mean reading it twice. Whether you already read it last week, whether you're going to read it again next week, right? So, right, like for example, what would we do right now if it would fall on Tetzava? You would read Tetzava, then you would read Kisisa, and then next week you would again begin from the beginning. There's a certain doubling over, but that only works, it's only shayach for Shkalim to be near Tetzava and Vayakel. It's shayach because it's read during that time of the year. According to Rav, that's Pinchas. Let me ask you, when is Pinchas read? In the middle of the summer. How is it even shayach for Pinchas to be during the time of Shkalim? Yet Tetzava and Vayakel, it's that time, guy. It works. We are more or less up to that. Again, even though today it never falls Tetzava, but that's more or less where we are up to. Everyone knows that, right? By Shmini, right? 8 times Shmini. Shmini is connected to Pesach. There's a certain, I know, but there's a leap year, there's a regular year. It's in the right neighborhood. But according to the Mando Amar, which is Rav Tzavas Karbani, if Shkalim is Pinchas, my friends, how is it possible for the Braisa to give a case? You get it? Where Shkalim is falling near a parsha that's right adjacent to it. Are we ever up to Pinchas during that time of the year? Mi Misramei Bohuzimna. The Gemara says, yes, here is it, my friends. Here we see that there was 2 sedarim of reading the weekly Torah parsha. There was the way we do it, and our seder is such that we finish the whole Torah once a year. Thus, Simchas Torah, Siyuma Shel Torah. In Eretz Yisrael, they read a third amount, approximately a week, which means it took them 3 years to finish it. The question is, when did it stop and why did it stop? That's what good we're learning. It's amazing. In Lebnei Marava, for the people that live in the west, west means west of Babel, which means the Bnei Eretz Yisrael, the Maskei, they would conclude the reading of the entire Torah only once in 3 years. Yes, that during that cycle, at times, when you come into the month of Adar, you are more or less around Parshas Pinchas, and therefore the issue was, we're going to get into more details about the repeating, we'll see different ways of what it means. But yeah, there's a certain amount of repetition. Like I just mentioned, Tetzava, then you read Kisisa on that same Shabbos, and then next week you go back again to Kisisa. That's called just an example of repeating. Or you're reading Vayakel, that means you finish reading Kisisa, you begin Vayakel, and then if that week is Shkalim, then you go back. Yeah, that's called repeating. And the same thing will be with Pinchas. And again, we mentioned that when the Rebbe enacted the Takon of learning Rambam, with the importance, again, of Shavuot L'chol Nefesh, so the Rebbe wanted, whenever he didn't want for there to be an exclusive type of learning. He wanted that, he never promoted that in public. Because you have to understand, as a leader of the Jewish people, there'll be Yidden that will feel left out. So he promoted it in private. So therefore, since the Rebbe felt that not everyone is shaykh to learn 3 chapters at Amam of Day, So the Rebbe says, make another track, one Perek a day, which means you'll finish the whole Mishnah Torah once in 3 years. And the Rebbe quoted this Gemara. Just like it was common, it's Shavuot L'chol Nefesh. Don't feel that you're wrong. Some people finish the Torah once in a year, some people would finish the Torah once in 3 years. And by the way, by that Rambam, it's good to know that Rebbe says, and if a person feels that it's too much for them, one chapter a day, then learn the Sefer HaMitzvahs that was also divided to be finished once in a year. That was very important. Okay, right. The concept of Shavuot L'chol Nefesh. Also, it's good for us to understand that when we promote something, to make sure we're speaking to everyone. If you promote something in public, and then in private you can do whatever you want. You can take an individual, and you know that they're shaykh to do a lot more and push them more, but don't do it in a way where other people that are not yet able to will feel, I'm the loser. That was something that the Rebbeim were very, very careful with, and they role modeled that to us, which is very unique. Okay, right. Tanya, Kavasi Dishmuel, and no one is refuted. Tanya Kavasi Dishmuel, Rosh Chodesh Adar, Shchaliyas B'Shabbos, says clearly, what do you read? Koiden Kisisa, Befedish, Umaftirin B'Yoyod HaKoyen. Now I want to just make a suggestion that maybe the importance of the statement is that Rav and Shmuel, who's the halacha like? Normally, not by Memoina, the halacha is like Rav. Here we're paskening like Shmuel, L'choida, because Ravashi found a Ravina, they found a Baraisa. And now, even though Rav Tanu Palak, we're not refuting Rav, but if there's a Baraisa with Shmuel, and that's Taka, we know the fact is that's Shkolim for us is Kesis. Okay, now we're going to start quoting many statements from Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, V'om Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, that again, this statement is based, you'll see, on the sheet of Shmuel, Rosh Chodesh Adar Shchaliyas B'Shabbos, Moitzien, Shalosh Toiros, one of the 4 potential times in the year that you take out 3 Sifrei Torah. V'koinen behen echad binyan shel yom, because again we paskin like the one Amoida that we didn't learn yet. That even on the Dalit Parshiyos, you don't substitute the Parsha of the week. You substitute what we call maftir. You read the Parsha of the week, and for that you have one Sefer Torah. Ve'echad of Rosh Chodesh, and ve'echad. Again, Kisisa because Rabbi Yitzchak is following Shmuel, following the Brais. For Omar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, I'll give you another case. Let's go now, my friends, to Chanukah, Rosh Chodesh, right? That Rosh Chodesh, Teves, what's unique, Chevra? You have the Shabbos. You have, if it's Rosh Chodesh, and Chanukah. Rosh Chodesh, Teves, Chalis B'Shabbos, also Meviim Shalosh Toiros, V'koinen Behem. Echad Minyan Shel Yom. Now let's go on the Seder. The next one is going to be Rosh Chodesh, which is the way we do it, and the next one is going to be Chanukah. And now
they had 3 Torahs. Most places have 3 Torahs.
So David is making a point that if a shul does not have 3 Sifrei Torah, you can roll it. But because of Tircha de Tzibura, then when there are 3 Sifrei Torah, that's how much we honor the tzibur. We also learned about, we don't add a 4th aliyah when it's a work day. You honor the tzibur. People have to go to work. You can argue just one more about, yeah.
It was so common back then?
Yeah. Now, why wouldn't we extrapolate one from the other? Why did he have to mention it twice? So Gemara says he needed to, but tzricha. And actually, he didn't need to, but let's attempt to show why he needed to. He really didn't. But on the premise that he said these 2 statements. If he only would have spoken about Chevra, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Teves, Chanukah, then I would have said erroneously, only Bahak Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Aval Bahach, but maybe Rabbi Yitzchak would opine like Rav. Now guys, one thing is clear. If you would hold like Rav, then you don't take out 3 Sifrei Torah on Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Adar, Shkolim, because Rosh Chodesh and Shkolim is the same parsha. We said how we make it different, but you don't need another Sefer Torah. So that's why, and we would have thought that he holds a B'shtei Torah Sagi. So it's really more for him to say that I paskin like Shmuel, and that's a Chiddush, we follow Shmuel. But now the problem, the other direction is a problematic. So why would it not be enough for Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha to say it regarding meaning Shkolim, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Adar, and David? That's the whole point. The point is that when you have 3 Sifrei Torah for Tircha de Tzibura, don't roll in the public. Already take out all 3. So then, V'loi Boyahach, why did he have to mention Chanukah? And the Gemara says he did not. He taka didn't. Chada Michlal Chaver Te'itma. He taka made the statement once, and then the Bnei HaYeshiva extrapolated, and like I mentioned, it's really 4 times. It's not, who knows the other 2 times? So the 3rd potential time is Chodesh on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Same thing. Again, not Lerav L'Shmuel. No, even Lerav, because Lerav Shkolim is Rosh Chodesh. There's Parshas HaChodesh is Elochem. right? If Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, and the fourth time is Simchas Torah. Okay, right. Itmar, we learned Rosh Chodesh Teva Shchalias B'choil. Let's go a little bit more about Chanukah right now. Okay, and now the issue is, how many people are called up? 4 people. 4 people, because even on Chanukah you call up 3 people, but Rosh Chodesh is a certain amount of people don't work, so you can afford to add a 4th. But the question is, which one comes first? That's a big topic. Let's go over here. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, that the first 3 should read in Rosh Chodesh, and the 4th in Chanukah. However, Rabdimi the min Haifa Amar, no punkt fakert. The first 3 call up in Chanukah, and the 4th in Rosh Chodesh. Now there's a logic for that. We'll explain. So Amar Rav Mani, first of all, because of the general rule, that which is frequent versus that which is less frequent. Guys, what's more frequent? Rosh Chodesh. Every month you have Rosh Chodesh. However, what will be the logic of the other side? No, Gavaldik. Because me Garam L'Revi Yavai. Chanukah, we learned together, you only call up 3 people. Why are you calling up a 4th person? Because it's Rosh Chodesh. So give the 4th should be used for Rosh Chodesh. Hilkach Revi, Rosh Chodesh, Boyim Mikreim. Okay, so you have a logic to each side. Gemara says, My Havi Allah. What's the halacha? 3 lines before the bottom. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Ein Mashgichin B'Rosh Chodesh. A very strong statement, and there's reasons behind it, that the main reason is Chanukah. But the way he words it, the main reason is Chanukah. He says, you don't look at Rosh Chodesh. You don't look. Rabba Amar, Ein Mashgichin B'Chanukah. And what's the halacha? Ein Mashgichin B'Chanukah. In other words, in andere Werte, Rosh Chodesh is the Iker. And why is that? Because of the rule, my friends, of Tadir Kadem, that which is more frequent comes first, and that's exactly the way we do it. Okay, now we're going to go back to the case that we quoted from the Braisa, the Shtikal Braisa. Let's go with Shmuel, that Shkolim is Kisisa, and it's Shayach, that it should fall on the week that you read Atat Tetzava. Let's go. Itmar, what happens today? It will never happen. That's just the way the calendar is made. But in the times of the Gemara, before the fixed calendar, what happens? Guys, that means Shabbos Shkolim falls on the parsha of Atat Tetzava. Now, what's the issue? You'll see. So the last line in the Amid again, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha and Abaya throughout. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, I'll tell you. We are continuously following the Shita from Daf Chav Gimel that you don't call an 8th person to mafter. We call up 7 people total. The 7th person is the one that will be reading the Haftorah. And therefore the 7th one has to be Shkolim, even if you don't skip the Parsha. The way we do it, you read the Parsha and then you add. So the first 6, Va'atat Tetzava, until Kisisa. And the 7th, because it's Parsha Shkolim, you keep on reading. V'chad michisisa ad v'osisa, right? Kir nechoshes, v'chana nechoshes. Okay, that's Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So Amar Abaya, finally Daf Lamed, that it's not good. It's not good. Why not? You want for everyone to be aware of the fact that we're reading something special. And people know that these psukim go after those psukim. Amri, the people in the shul will say, you didn't add anything special. You're reading the parsha of the week. And instead of stopping at the end of the Avat Tetzava, you went into the next parsha.
Couldn't help yourself.
Now, I'm going to add something. If you take out another Sefer Torah, then no one would say that. But just like it's a given that when, according to Rav, the Gemara says that Shkolim is the parsha of Rosh Chodesh, you don't take out 2 Sifrei Torah, there's no need. Even according to Shmuel, when Va'ata Tetzav is the portion of the week, then you would not take out another Sefer Torah because you are up to Kisi, so there's no need to do that. So there's no heker of another Sefer Torah, so it's not enough of a heker. So Ella Amar Abaye, not like Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. What do you do? Karu Shita Tetzava Ad V'Asisa. I agree with you. Shishi is Shishi and Shvi, but not Shishi and Shvi. Yeah, Shishi and Shvi. Shishi, Shvi, and you go into Kisisa until I think it's 6 psukim. You read the 6 psukim of Shkolim. And then v'chad, the seventh, you repeat. Now guys, for us repeating is normal because our maftir is a repetition, but again, this whole sugya, then these amoyroim, they never repeated anything from maftir. So that will chap everyone's attention. V'chad, tani v'kari. Tani v'kari means you chaz it over, you repeat. From kisisa ad ve'osis. Okay, Meisvei, this kasha we'll see on the sheet of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcham. It says in a brayso, again we're quoting braysos that we're going to quote the whole brayso in the bottom of the summit. Chalias b'parsha smuchalon. These are the words of the brayso. In which if shkolim is falling on the Shabbos, tetzava, that's smuchal. It's falling on the Shabbos, where anyways kisisa is the reading after the Shabbos. Again, whether that's milafanel means that Shabbos ata tetzava, or what happens if kisisa, if shkolim falls on the parsha of Vayakel, that's malach. So the Brayso says what to do. Koiden oisa. These are the words. Read it and repeat it. Read it and repeat it. So now, as we just explained, that the way shkolim is read when it falls on ata tetzava is you repeat it on that Shabbos b'diuk. How are you repeating it? How are you repeating it? You're not repeating it. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, hold on. Before I explain to you what the word repeating means, according to Abaya mi nicha, okay, you only explain the repetition if it's the case where it's lifanel, which means that the portion of shkolim is va'ata tetzava. But la'acharel, the Brayso spoke about la'acharel. Hechem mishkachas lo. You're not going to repeat. There's no repetition. So what must mean repetition? It means that over 2 Shabbos you'll be repeating it. Or if this week is Parshas Vayakel, and you're going to read now also shkolim, repeating means that not only did I read it last week, I'm reading it this week. According to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, that's the meaning. No, it's you're going to read Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Shishi is Shishi and Shvi. What Shvi'i Kisisa, the first 6 verses, and that's it. And next week you're going to repeat it again because next week is Parshas Kisisa. You begin from the beginning. Beautiful. The Gemara wants to know now. Okay, what about a case that the Brayso didn't speak about? What happens if Chalias b'Kisisa Atzma? What happens? Lishmuel, Parsha Shekolim, falls out on Kisisa. What do you do? So if you don't mind repeating, you're wondering, what's the issue? I know there's no issue if you don't mind repeating, but if you don't want to repeat. In other words, if you're going to begin reading the normal Parsha, you're going to read until the end, and then for Shkolim, you're going to go back to the beginning, you are repeating. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, this is all the Shitasa. You see, like we learned before, you don't repeat. He says you begin, Karu Shita Min Va'asisa. That week, last week, guys, was Va'ata Tetzava. Okay? This week, don't begin from the beginning of Kisisa. Skip the first 6 psukim. I think it's 6 psukim. Begin from making the Kiyar Nochoshus. And then go back and read the beginning. Read from Vasis ad Vayakel. And V'chad, which is the 7th, which was then the Maftar Haftorah, Kori Mikisisa ad Vasis. And Abaya doesn't like it. Abaya, Hashti Amri Lamafreyu the Kari. I don't like the fact, forget about repeating, not repeating. This is called reading out of sequence. And people will think that it is okay to read out of sequence. Now the truth is, it's not really reading out of sequence, but you are reading out of sequence. You're using the shkolim to go backwards. So yeah, there's an out of sequence. El Amar Abaye, I don't mind repeating. Karu Shita, the guys who are going into the wide lines. First, you begin from the beginning. From the beginning of Kisisa until Vayakel. How many people do you call up? Only 6 people. Again, because Maftir is not a repetition. We're speaking according to those who hold, on Daf Chav Gimel, you only call 7 people on Shabbos. You only call 7 people on Shabbos. So Shishi is Shishi and Shvi. And the 7th one, the Chad, Tani, V'Kari. Yes, here you repeat from Kisisa ad Vyosisa, and that's not called going out of sequence because you didn't go out of sequence. Because the portion of the week began from the beginning of Kisisa and you went until the end. Now you're adding a new parsha. That you can do. Tanya Kavasa da Abaye. And by the way, this Braisa will be another Raya to Shmuel. All of this, L'Rav B'chlal doesn't fit. Because Abaye Chal Lias B'chisisa Atzma Koirin Oisa V'Koiflin Oisa. Clearly, and that's the way we do it. Says the Gemara, says in the Mishnah, what was the second case of the Mishnah? That Chal Lias B'Secha Shabbos, that if Rosh Chodesh Adar is not on Shabbos, but it's during the week, So then, when do you reach Shkolim? Right, Magdim and L'Shabbos Sha'avra. You reach Shkolim on the Shabbos prior to the month of Adar, which is either what we call Shabbos Mevarchim Adar, but really it's going to be in the month of Shvat. Itma we learned. Rosh Chodesh Adar Shchaliyas Be'erev Shabbos. Now this nuance is not written in the Mishnah. You can argue Friday is during the week, but let's see what's unique. So Rav says it's not, Rosh Chodesh is not on Shabbos, Magdimin. You got to read Shkolim, Shabbos Mevarchim. Shmuel says Ma'achlin. Ma'achlin means you read it on Beis Adar. Now we got a problem. What's the problem? What did we learn today? At least the Hashgacha Pratzos of us being a little bit behind is that we just learned that we're trying to make our Mishnah fit even according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel that says you need 2 weeks prep, but you need 2 weeks prep. And if the money changers set up their shops on the 15th and you are only reading Shkolim on number 2, you're missing the 1 day. So says the Gemara, Rav explains, Rav says, why do I say Magdimin? Because the Imkain, if you're not Magdimin, if you'll do it like Shmuel, then Batzri Luhu Yomer de Shulchanis, you're not going to have your full 2 weeks. However, Shmuel says no. Shmuel says that you can still read it on the month of Adar. Ma'achlin, you'll read it on Beis Adar. Why? He's saying something practical. Because the money changers would not set up their shops on Friday. They would also put it for Sunday.
They'd be ma'acher too.
They would also be ma'acher. They were ma'acher, so you still have 2 weeks. Beautiful. Soif, chameisar b'mali shapsa. Mikla, when the 15th falls out on Friday, which is what would happen when a Chodesh Adar is on Friday, then Shulchanis loy nafki, the tables are not properly set up anyways until Chad b'Shaba, all right, until Sunday. So therefore, ma'achrin, because you have the full 2 weeks. Beautiful. Now, it says in our Mishnah, Tanan, Chaliyas, B'toich HaShabbos, Magdimin L'Sha'avar. Right? And then, Umafsikin L'Shabbos Acheres. Mafsikin means, like we mentioned, if indeed you're going to reach Shkolim, Shabbos Mevarchim, then there's going to be a week of a break where there's nothing unique. There's no Dalet Parshiyos. Because like we mentioned, Zachar has to be adjacent to Purim. So there'll be a week where it's just a regular Shabbos. Now, my love, the Mishnah says, Chal liyos b'toich Shabbos. Afilu be'erev Shabbos, the word says, no, you're lav dafka. Maybe it means only b'toich Shabbos dafka, but not on Friday. Okay, Tashema, it says in the Braisa, Ezi Shabbos Rishoino. Right, what's the first week? Right, we're speaking about which week is the first week of the reading of the Dalet Parshiyos. Says the Braisa, Kol shechal Rosh Chodesh Adar liyos b'toicha. Right? So if whenever the Chodesh is b'toicha, then you reach Shkolim on the preceding Shabbos. Again, b'toicha. So my b'toicha means during even be'erev Shabbos, right? Oh no, I'm sorry. The Braiser says b'feidish v'afilu be'erev Shabbos. So my love, afilu be'erev Shabbos. Now the Braiser didn't say regarding erev Shabbos that you read it on the Shabbos preceding, but it's all the same. My love, afilu be'erev Shabbos. Dumi de toicha ma toicha magdimin. Whenever Chodesh Adar falls during the week, you read Shkolim on the Shabbos preceding. Also on Erev Shabbos, you're reading on Shabbos preceding. Clear? No. Amar Shmuel, Taich ba, v'chein tanav Shmuel ba. No. That if v'chein be'erev Shabbos, you read it on the Shabbos afterwards. It's a doichik, but that's the way you read it. So we have a machloikas Amoraim, and the Gemara says, really, the same is already a machloikas Tanoim. And as it says, regarding the reading of the 4 parshiyos, misargen l'shabbosos, we alternate. Alternation means there is something unique, and then there is a normal week. There is a break, and that's exactly what. So there's an alternation. And when does that happen? Between Shkolim and between Zachar. So holds Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. And Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, no, ein misargen, they are consecutive. Says the Braisa, Amar Rab Shimon ben Elazar, when do I say it's not always that it's ein misargen, that we don't alternate? When do I say that it's consecutive? Only bisman shechal liyos be'erev Shabbos. By the way, they're clearly not like Rav. In other words, he holds that when it's erev Shabbos, you get it? You read it on Beis Adar. It's beautiful because if you reach Kolam on Beis Adar, then next Shabbos is the 8th of Adar. Next Shabbos is Shabbos before Purim. So, but Rebbe doesn't agree with that. That's the machlekes. Aval bisman liyos b'techa Shabbos. Even Rab Shimon Elazar holds magdim b'koyde b'Shabbos she'avra. You reach Kolam on the week before, afal pishu Shvat, and there's going to be a alternation. So clearly, as Shmuel follows Reb Shimon, and Rav follows Shitas Rebbe. Weiter. Bashniya Zachar, the second of the 4 portions, is the parsha of Zachar. Which what do we read? We read Bishalach, right? Vayavei Amalek. Slicha or Gewalt. We read that we read on we read Kiseitze. They read Kiseitze. Okay, good. So Itmer Purim Shchaliyas Ve'erev Shabbos. Let's go again. Purim is on Friday. So again, Zachar is read Shabbos before. So Rav says Magdimin, right? That's, by the way, when Purim is on Friday, just for the record, Shabbos before is the 8th of Adar. Magdimin Parsha Zachar to the 8th. Shmuel says Ma'achlan. Wow. Shmuel says, guys, listen, that when Purim is on Friday, you're going to read Zachar on the 15th. On what we call Shushan Purim. Now, Rav Amar Magdimin, he says it has to be that way. It says, the Hayamim ha'elu nizkarim v'nasim. Nizkarim means to verbally read Parsha Zachar. V'nasim means we are observing the Yom Tov. Which one is mentioned first? First nizkarim, read Zachar, and then celebrate Purim. But how can Shmuel say Ma'achar? And according to Shmuel, you're going to celebrate Purim, and only tomorrow on Shabbos are you going to read Zachar? Shmuel Ma'achar, he says yes. Listen to Shmuel's logic. Because Kiv and the Ikam Mukafim, the Avdei Bechamesar, Asiya v'Schira b'Hadei Adodi Koasyon. Since, when Purim falls out on Friday, not everyone will do Zechira before Asiya. People that live in cities that are surrounded with walls, that's called the Purim Mishulish. Without getting into this, not enough time. But there are two parts of the Asiya. What is that? The Su'udah that they have to do. And if you know the details, not for now, that if there is an Eruv, you also send Mishloach Manos. They do it on Shabbos. So doing it together is not bad. It's Takat says, Niskarim V'nasim. But it doesn't have to, you can't flip the order. But if it's Bahadi Adadi, it's tolerable. Now here it's unique. Now here's the stretch. So since anyways there are Yidden that are reading it on Shabbos because it's together, even if you don't live in a walled city, maybe not to have agudas, at least to keep a more commonality, Shmuel holds that in the case where Purim falls out on Erev Shabbos, Zachar is read on Shushan Purim. Let's go weiter.
We learned at the beginning of the Sefta that the walled cities, if it's on Shabbos, they read the Megillah earlier.
So Shuk is really asking a question. The question is
the question is that it doesn't matter. You're already Mazkir.
No, Maskir doesn't read the reading of the Megillah. Maskir has to mean reading Zachar. Fakert. No. Okay, weiter. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Vashniya Zachar. 1 second, the second week is Zachar. Whenever the Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, which is the first case of the Mishnah, then Mikla Purim is going to fall out on the end of Shabbos. And yet the Mishnah says that when do you read it? Bashniya, right? So Bashniya L'chayda means if you're going to delay it, if you will delay it to the Shabbos afterwards, it won't be in the second week of the month. So Amar Rav Papa, no. Shniya L'Afsaka. No, again, like everyone, you'll see the map. There's always going to be scenarios where there's going to, not every time, there are L'Kula Alma scenarios, like we just learned before, where it doesn't go Shkalim Zachar, there will be a break. Shniya of the Mishnah simply means the second of the 4 portions, whenever it's read, is going to be Zachar. And if you read it Shabbos and you read Zachar, like we're saying, on Shushan Purim, doesn't matter. There was nothing read in between Shkalim and Zachar. Tanan Tashima, it says in the Braisa, that Eza Shabbos Shniya, Kol Shachal Purim Liyos B'toicha L'chayra, and it says again, even on Erev Shabbos, clearly, right? So you read Zachar, Shabbos preceding the week of Purim, and then when it says Afilu B'Erev Shabbos is Mashma, again, we just had this above, My Lav Erev Shabbos, Dumi D'toicha, My Toicha Magdimen, Af Erev Shabbos Magdimen. So again, Shmuel is a doichik, no, Erev Shabbos is different. Erev Shabbos Ba. You know what Ba means? Again, Ba means Shabbos afterwards. Next case, says the Gemara, next case in the Gemara, Chaliyas b'Shabbos atzma. What happens if Purim falls out on Shabbos? The calendar today, again, does not allow for such a thing to happen. What could happen today is Shushan Purim on Shabbos, right? Purim is Shulish. But what happens when the 14th falls out on Shabbos? So here, what's the question? When do you read Zachar? That is the question. So Amar, Rav Huna, L'divrei HaKoil, Ein Magdimin. Because everyone agrees that all what we are looking for is not to have the Niskarim after the Venasim. Bahadi Hadadi is good, but Rav Nachman Amar Adani Machloikes. Itmanami, Amar Abchia Bar Abba, Amar Abba, Amar Rav, Purim that falls out on Shabbos. It's not relevant today, it cannot happen. But when it happened, Magdim v'koyre b'Shabbos she'avra zachar, because niskarim v'nasim dafke. It's not only that we don't want to revert that order, but we want specifically for there to be a remembrance, which is done not by reading the Megillah, at least not lechatchila. You are reading the Parsha Zachar, and then you are going to observe the holiday of Purim. It's Shabbos before. Let's chop and invite it. B'shlishis paradumam, ton rabbanon, ezu Shabbos shlishis. Again, guys, don't think that the third week means always that after Zachar, the next week is Para. Or the Yeh, or the Nish. Now, it began with a Machloikes. So says the Braisa, opinion number one, Kol shesmucha lePurim ma'achareh. It's the first Shabbos after Purim. Right? Sounds clear, right? So, if Shabbos after Purim, just for the record, if you're reading Zachar Shabbos before Purim, so then it will be Zachar and Para. Problem is that there is an Amoida who cannot argue with the Tana, but it sounds like he does. Itmer Rav Chama Bar Chanina says, Shabbos hasmucha l'Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's the Shabbos closest to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and by the way, the Shabbos preceding Rosh Chodesh Nisan is not the same Shabbos after Purim. There is a Shabbos in between. So the Gemara says, no, v'loi pligi. He's not arguing. Ha Rav Chama is the Ikla Rosh Chodesh Nisan b'Shabbos. Then it fits. Okay. First Shabbos after Purim is when you're going to read Para.
Would be the 30th, would be Rosh Chodesh. So the 23rd would be Shabbos in between. And it'd be the 16th.
I take that back. Punkt verkehrt. That when Rosh Chodesh Nisan is on Shabbos, there even the Tana will agree that you read Para prior to Rosh Chodesh. Yes, Shuki, and that will mean that there's going to be a Shabbos break between Zachar and Par, thank you, and the Ikla be'emsa Shabbos. And then you're going to read Para the week after Purim, and then you're going to read the next Shabbos, HaChodesh, because it's going to be the week before Rosh Chodesh. It works out. But Revi'as HaChodesh is Elochem. So Tana Rabbanon. Now guys, this is pure Chazar. I know we're going to go a little bit over, but this pure Chazar is because we mamish quoted what we learned today between Daf Chav Testament Beis and Daf Lamed. We quoted almost every piece of this Brais. Number one, Rosh Chodesh Adar Shchalias b'Shabbos, which is also the first case of our Mishnah, but here in the Brais with more details, like Shmuel, you read Kisisa, and the Haftorah is b'Yehoyada. Ve'ezi Shabbos Rishoina. How do you define that? Kol Shechal Rosh Chodesh Lias b'Toicha Va'filu be'erev Shabbos. I know again Shmuel has his doichik, but it sounds like Rav. Bashniya, we already established it doesn't mean the next week. We said that clear. It means the next time that you will be reading from the Dalet Parshi is the next of the four is Zachar. And what Haftorah do you read? Pakadati from Shmuel. Ve'ezu Shabbos Shniya. And clearly not the week after Shkalim, but Kol Shechal Purim Lias B'Toicha V'Afilu Erev Shabbos. Again, Erev Shabbos, Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. B'Shlishis Paraduma U'Maftirim Zrak Aleichem. The Ezi Shabbos Shlishis. Here again, we just quoted this. Kol Shesmucha LePurim Achareh. The Braisa says the third week is Shabbos after Purim, and we established that there can be an exception. And Baraviz HaChodesh Hazeh U'Maftirim Koyim Hashem Elokim Barishon BeEchad HaChodesh and Parshas Yecheskel. Let's just learn the top of Daf Lamed Amid Beis. Ve'ezi Shabbos Reviz Kol Shechal Rosh Chodesh Nisan Liyos B'Toicha, and even Be'erev Shabbos. Now, what Rashi does here, I know we don't have time, but just to be aware of it, if you have in the beautiful new Gemaras, you have beautiful pictures of these calendars, that there are a total of 4 options of exactly how will these 4 parshas be played out. You have a siman called Zatu, you have a siman called Dad, Boy, and Uviyoi. Uviyoi is a case where Shkalim is read. There's such a case, and there's going to be a alternate week where it's a regular parsha, a break. That's the one option. And then you're going to have Zachar. And then again, there's going to be a week where there's nothing, as we just quoted on the bottom of Lamed, that if a Chodesh is read much later, then there'll be a week break. And then, so it's going to be Shkalim, nothing. Zachar, next week, regular. And then Para and Chodesh, that's the only of the 4 options where you're going to have 2 breaks. All the other options are going to be options where there's going to be one alternation, either between Shkalim and Zachar, or at a later point. Chavra, we'll stop over here, God willing, to be continued.